What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now Plus. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about Final Fantasy 16, the report, or really the statement by Jason Schreier saying that the game is coming sooner than people think. It's been in development for 4 years. So let's read through. This comes from Push Square. So I guess he was on a Triple Click podcast, and let's go over what was said, and I'll go over my thoughts on it. So Final Fantasy 16 has been in development for at least 4 years in some capacity, according to Jason Schreier. Speaking on the latest Triple Click podcast, Schreier credits sources who are apparently familiar with the game's production. And yes, this does mean that Final Fantasy 16 is coming sooner than people think. Square Enix has over recent years developed a bad habit of announcing some of its games far too early, but it sounds like it won't be too long until we're playing the next Final Fantasy game on the PS5. Indeed, what shocked us most about Final Fantasy's trailer was that it looks like an actual game, not just some kind of barely formed project that hasn't even entered full development. Still, we're going to have to wait a while to hear more. Square Enix has stated that the next Final Fantasy 16 information dump will happen in 2021. So now, honestly, I do believe that. I think, one, Jason Schreier, as I've said multiple times, don't like the guy, but he does know his stuff. So when he says that this game has been in development for 4 years, it's absolutely been in development for 4 years. The thing is, when we saw the trailer, obviously, right, it said Final Fantasy 16, then nothing. It said PS5, right? That was a console exclusive. There was some confusion or some misstatements or missed things in general where they put, that maybe it's coming to PC as well, but then nobody really knows or nobody's really saying it. All that fun stuff. But yeah, the game looks very close to release. To be honest with you, this is not a slight against Final Fantasy. To me, visually, it wasn't the greatest thing in the world. And maybe it's because for Final Fantasy, I got for 7's remake, it's really, in my opinion, one of the most beautiful games ever made. Just the art style, some of the CG scenes. Firstly, most of the game is a movie, but the CG scenes, there's a couple of them throughout the game. Kind of like, Kingdom Hearts sometimes it has had the really, I don't know, they put everything into these couple CG moments. It was maybe the greatest thing I've ever seen in any game ever. And so maybe my expectations are a little bit too wild. 16 doesn't look that good, but it does look, I'm not saying it looks bad. It looks really, really solid. But yeah, they're right. I mean, it looks like a game that's already not necessarily fully done, but very, very, if this came out in 2 to 3 years, again, I don't want to criticize it all, because I am, recently I am a pretty solid Final Fantasy fan. I'm really, really excited for 16. That's gonna be one of my most anticipated games, or that is one of my most anticipated games. But if this game came out 2, 3+ years later, with how it looks now, that's, in my opinion, that's not good enough. It looks like it would be it would basically be aging very bad, right? We would see it and we would say, this looks like a game meant for 2020, 2021, maybe even 2019. I've seen people say some pretty mean things about the graphics. Totally, totally cool. But yeah, so I think that's likely. Again, like they said, we know that we'll get more information in 2021. I would not be surprised in the slightest if this was a fall 2021 game. We talk so much about Sony's lineup and how they have to build it and how important it is, because you got to give people reasons to get the PS5. And the thing with Sony, what they're doing, Microsoft obviously buying Bethesda, massive deal. Sony obviously has to take a different, approach to it. And the way they're going about it is making deals with all these companies, right? So it's not even just first-party games for Sony. It's first-party, and then it's a lot of third-party stuff. Final Fantasy is included in there. So you look at Horizon, you look at Ratchet & Clank, you look at God of War. These are really big. Those are 3 games that, unless something goes wrong, seemingly are happening in 2021. Okay, Ratchet & Clank, probably very, very early. Horizon, probably mid, maybe spring, summer, early summer. God of War, fall. And that, honestly, on its own, is probably reason enough by the end of the year that you would say, there's games here to get, just like if Microsoft had Halo and they had a Bethesda, and then they maybe had one Bethesda game and they had some random other game. They had 3, 4 games. Those are pretty good. The more games you have, obviously, the more reason you have to get the next gen consoles. So Sony has that, and they could say, okay, well, we also have these third-party deals. Remember, they were looking at doing Starfield, and then obviously now with Final Fantasy 16, I think it's a really solid idea that, again, they're not demanding, okay, it has to come out at this time, but we know there's a history, especially with Final Fantasy 15. That game came out in September of the year it was released. So I think that September seems pretty, honestly, game developers tend to stick with the months that work really, really well for them. Now, I don't know how well Final Fantasy 15 worked out for them. I think it worked. I think it was a very high-selling game. game. So I would imagine this is like an early fall game of next year. Truly, again, Jason Schreier saying it's coming sooner than people think. There's two ways of thinking that. Number one is if people think the game is coming, 2-3 years. It's not. It's actually coming one. That's one way of thinking about it. Another way, which I don't think is happening, but maybe he's talking about these people, is someone like me. I had when I saw that September or like the fall of 2021 was when I thought this game was going to come out. So if he's talking to me sooner than I think, then maybe this is a spring game. I don't think that'll be the case. I feel like they would have told us that if the game, even with like Horizon, like they said, it's coming out in like spring of 2020. Like they're trying to get it out in that, March through June period, probably maybe February through June period. God of War just says 2021, which to me, again, means fall, means like later in the year. The farther it goes, the less likely you're going to give a month for it, right? Or even a month, a day, whatever. So for Final Fantasy, well, firstly, they didn't give actually anything, which you could say maybe is slightly worrying. But I honestly feel like that was just to be like, here's like a big drop, like, oh dear Jesus, like they have Final Fantasy 16. It's being worked on. But I really do think 1 year away seems kind of likely. So I will say fall of 2021, but we can talk about that obviously in future videos as we get closer. So guys, let me know in the comments below. What do you think? Do you believe Jason Schreier? Do you think that this game is releasing? When do you think the game is releasing? Do you think 1 year is enough time? Do you think it's going to be a little bit longer? If it's already been in development for 4 years, next year would be 5. I can't imagine it would. I mean, it can. They can go 6, 7, 8, but I think 5 years is a pretty darn solid number for a game like this. Obviously, every development team is different, though. So let me know. As always, make sure you guys are subscribed to this YouTube channel. Hit the bell icon so you guys know when all these videos go up. And thank you all so much for watching. I do a brand new video on this channel every single day, and so I hope to see you guys for tomorrow's video.